In case you couldn't tell, I'm a monster. Rawr. And so forth. Yeah, you're probably far more acquainted with the bigger names of monstrosity. Dr. Henry Jekyll, perhaps his better half, Mr. Edward Hyde, or Count Dracula. Maybe. You know, they all have one thing in common. Toxic masculinity. They're patriarchy's monsters, kind of like Kevin Spacey, Brett Kavanaugh, that one guy. Sure you know who I'm talking about. You know who gets a really bad rap in all of this? It's Frankenstein's monster. Poor fella. Really feel some things for him. See, the real problem is his creator, Dr. Victor Frankenstein, and his patriarchal obsession with controlling life itself. See, the long story short, this doctor decides to create life, and frankly, he's repulsed by his monster, the ugliness specifically, and in turn abandons this monster. Poor fella. I really do feel quite bad for Frankenstein's monster. Ooh, so scary. You know, having been abandoned, ultimately, the monster vows revenge, which eventually leads us to a classical performance of daddy issues on the public stage. And rendition after adaptation after rendition, it's the same story over and over again. Toxic masculinity, so tiring. See, I'm a different kind of monster, a lesser known monster with far more power, but you're probably wondering what kind of power. Well, the power to unravel a person's sense of self. And that's terrifying. See, unlike the bigger names of monstrosity, I'm a monster that emerges in the fringes of society, a trans monstrosity. Susan Stryker suggests a parallel between Frankenstein's monster and ultimately what she terms transsexual monstrosity. See, Frankenstein's monster was denied human status because of his ugliness. That is, physicality restricted his access to human status. In turn, he acquired a language that he can converse with other humans. That is, he blurred the distinction between what was human and what was not human. Conversely, Susan Stryker argues that transgender subjects can sometimes pass as cisgender, as human, ultimately. And the implications of passing are quite profound, and the material rewards are quite profound in a cis-sexist and binary world. This can include gainful employment or a sexual hookup on your Grindr or Tinder app. See, having passed as cisgender, or as human for short here, the trans subject must assert their monstrosity through linguistic means. For instance, I may look like a typical man, but I'm anything but. I am a trans monstrosity in this framework. Now, allow me to quote Susan Stryker, an incantation here. I want to lay claim to the dark powers of my monstrous identity without using it as a weapon against others or being wounded by it myself. I will say this as bluntly as I know how. I am a transsexual and I am a monster. Oh, that didn't feel as good as I wanted it to. Now, claiming the monstrosity of transness is a radical act that resignifies transness as a source of power, and this is ultimately very hard work. See, 2018 has been the deadliest year for transgender people in recorded history, for trans women of color, and black trans women very specifically. Do you know what the average life expectancy of a trans person in the US is? 35. 35 years. As a result, trans monstrosity is realized in the embodied performance of resistance to transphobia and cissexism in everyday life. The trans monster yells back and claps back, knowing tomorrow isn't guaranteed anyhow, so why wait to create the future that we deserve today? The trans monster knows we weren't born into the wrong body. We were born into the wrong culture at the wrong time in history. The trans monster derails every single attempt to assert binary gender as a compulsory enactment. In short, the trans subject is monstrous because we refuse to fit into their world. Craig, can you help me put the lines in here? Let's hope for the best and they don't pop. And because the trans monster knows that gender is nothing more than a colonial fiction that reduces the universe of gender to two unstable categories against which we are all forced to toil. So here we are today, me, the trans monster, all of you, the eventual trans monsters, you just don't know it yet, and I'm sorry, it's coming your way. Now you're probably wondering what I've been doing here today, playing with this little box here. Frankly, I'm surprised no one's asked. A little offended, I'll be real. In short, I'm doing my work. My trans monstrous work. See, some newlywed couple invited their friends over for this ritual sexist indoctrination ritual. Some people call it a gender reveal party. I'm not really sure. I don't know. Really, they're celebrating the genitals of an unborn infant and then projecting gender futures onto it. I'm still fighting those, and it's been 37 years. Jeez. Anyhow, I'm just preparing for this ritual in my own way by setting it up for disaster. See, for me, the only gender reveal party worth audiencing is a gender reveal party that fails. Which I argue is, frankly, the finest media genre ever conducted. Go on, try it out if you haven't already. You have at least a little bit tonight. If you haven't, go home, search for Gender Reveal Party Fails. Sit back and enjoy my monstrous labor. It's exhausting. Know that unlike a typical fail video in which a young man wearing Axe body spray, probably riding a skateboard and falls, a gender reveal party fail isn't happenstance. Rather, it's an intentional, energetic force of trans monsters everywhere working to unravel the very foundation of compulsory gender performance. Be afraid. Be moderately afraid. As I close this performance with Susan Streicher's monstrous benediction. May you discover the enlivening power of darkness within yourself. May it nourish your rage. May your rage inform your actions and your actions transform you as you struggle to transform your world.